Welcome to the Virtual Strategic Solutions Virtual Reality Simulation System. Accessing Legacy Dataset. Files loaded. Simulation ready. Ishmael Ashur, or Lord of the Pitt, is the leader of the Pitt in 2277. A former soldier of the Brotherhood of Steel, he single-handedly revitalized the city following its near destruction by the Brotherhood, and is the central character in the Fallout 3 add-on, The Pitt. Ashur's rank in the Brotherhood before he became the Lord of the Pitt is not completely clear. While he presents himself as a mere initiate, he displays leadership and education consistent with a paladin, and is identified as such in the official game guide. Born on the West Coast, Ashur was picked for the Brotherhood of Steel expedition to DC under Star Paladin Owen Lyons. He survived the transcontinental crossing and the arrival in the capital wasteland. He accompanied Lyons during the expedition to the Pitt in what would become the pivotal moment of his life. As the Brotherhood swept through the city, slaughtering resisting inhabitants and looting anything undamaged, Ashur was caught in an explosion in the steel mill and buried under rubble. Believed to be killed in action, he was not recovered as Lyons pulled out of the city. However, he survived, as his power armor protected him from being crushed to death. He was found by survivors trying to pull him out of the rubble and take his armor. When he awoke, they took him for a god. Ashur didn't argue and saw the Pitt in a new light, deciding to leverage their divine dedication, combine it with his leadership skills, and turn the Pitt around. The scourge was a blessing in disguise. Ashur easily established himself as the leader of the survivors. Presenting himself as a mere initiate, he rallied the people around him. The Brotherhood killed most of the Trogs and the Wildmen, giving the Pitt a reprieve, calming it down, and allowing Ashur to rebuild. What's more, while the looting by Lyons was severe, it left behind a substantial amount of material, and especially people, to rebuild with. The Brotherhood left behind whatever it considered damaged goods, giving Ashur a readily available stockpile of material. Some choices were ironic. While the Brotherhood took Greg Bear and left behind his elder brothers considered too far gone, Ashur took them under his wing and molded them into some of his finest soldiers. Unable to contact the Midwestern Brotherhood, the Brotherhood pressed on eastwards towards Washington, D.C. During their travels, the Brotherhood came across the disturbingly vile ruins of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Known as the Pitt, the city was lawless. Gangs, raiders, slavers, and many other kinds of horrors all freely wandered, and anarchy ruled the streets. The few innocent inhabitants had to scratch out a living in this terrorizing environment, most of who were either sick or dying from the combined effects of the intense radiation and pollution from pre-war industrial factories damaged by the bombs spewing into the atmosphere. Horrified by what they saw, the Brotherhood then led the Scourge, a large-scale military action throughout the Pitt, combing the ruins and killing anyone who dared to put up a fight. Due to their sheer superior technological and combat abilities, the Brotherhood sustained virtually no losses, but wiped out much of the Pitt's population. By the time the Scourge was over, only a handful of raider gangs still existed in the city. Although the intent of the Scourge remains unclear, the Brotherhood took many non-mutated children, such as Paladin Kodiak, from the Pitt and placed them into initiate training. Instead of trying to return to the Brotherhood, Ashur founded the new city of the Pitt because he was touched by the tenacious locals who had endured great hardship before, during and after the Scourge. Another reason being the fact that it contained the only operational steel mill the Brotherhood had ever run into, allowing the Pitt to produce its own equipment. To gain control, Ashur formed his own gang, and using his Brotherhood training and expertise, quickly began killing the leaders of remaining raider gangs to establish dominance. Raiders who did not rebel were incorporated into his gang, and numbers swelled. His control over the Pitt grew to the point where his territory extended to most of the ruins. Ashur transformed his raider gang into a functioning government under his autocratic rule, turning his force into an army with the most fierce raiders becoming his lieutenants. With the Pitt firmly under his control, Ashur and his guards occupied a mostly intact skyscraper called Haven as his palace to watch over his city. However, it was not long before he realized that raider gangs would not be enough to rebuild the Pitt. He resorted to using slave labor overseen by his raiders to carry out the tasks necessary to fire up the old industries again, relying on slave hubs like Paradise Falls to provide the bodies necessary. Unlike the Legion or the West Coast Guild, Ashur does not believe in a firmly stratified society. He insists on referring to slaves as workers, believing that this small difference is important in the big scheme of things, especially since they can earn their freedom. He also refers to his raiders as soldiers, drawing a line between their past lives and their new role as footmen in his army. He's well aware they are prone to cruelty, but tries to limit the abuse slaves suffer, and if anyone proves to be particularly sadistic, he has them executed and hanged up in public as a reminder to everyone. A lesser punishment is reassignment to border guard duty. Though brutal, the measures resulted in success, and the pit began to grow, with Ashur importing large numbers of slaves, even entire towns captured by slavers, and conscripting or hiring raiders from the outside to fill out the ranks of his army. The growing size of the army also meant delegating an increasing number of duties, with policing the slaves and trogs assigned to Crenshaw, one of his second-in-command. However, a crucial obstacle to the pit's future was the troglodyte degeneration contagion, which made procreation impossible. Ashur had a stroke of luck. The pit was approached by a scientist named Sandra Kundanika after hearing about its status as an up-and-coming civilization in the wastes. Sandra gained an audience with Ashur and was welcomed into his inner circle. The two developed feelings for each other, becoming life partners. A year before 2277, Sandra had become pregnant and gave birth to Ashur's child, a daughter named Marie. Their daughter became an unlikely breakthrough. She was immune to the mutating properties of the pit or radiation. This immunity meant that Marie would not be affected by the troglodyte degeneration contagion, which had been massively blighting the pit. Ashur and Sandra set to work on developing a cure for their fellow pit inhabitants. The cure would remove the necessity to rely on outside sources for population growth, as the residents of the pit would be immunized and able to procreate. The city would be able to function without having to buy people to maintain the manpower necessary to operate. Ashur's ultimate goal is to create a strong foundation for a future nation. He believes he is on the right track, as in 20 years he managed to establish an army, an industry, and is likely to have a solution to the hellish radiation and contamination of the pit in the coming years.